Black Fencers Synthetic Regimental Broadsword. Hi, I'm Nick Thomas and welcome back to the Academy of Historical Fencing. So we use a lot of the Black Fencer products made in Spain. We use their synthetic range, as this is, so plastic type blades, and we use their steel range as well. In fact, we've got probably 400, and that's not an exaggeration, we've got approximately 400, or have bought about 400 Black Fencer swords just in the AHF alone, at least, and that's just what we've got in kind of club orders. And the vast majority of them are still around because they are very, very durable and long-lasting, especially synthetic models. And I'll talk about that a bit later. But anyway, so what is this? Well, Black Fencer first released a basket hilt quite a few years ago now, and I did have one going back then, and it's sort of similar, but the bars here that go back over the wrist are slightly longer, which is more like some of the kind of more family, as in sort of Highland family swords of the 18th century. This is called a regimental because it's designed to be more like the mass-produced regimental swords. And the other change is the blade. It has a completely different kind of blade with a different cross-section. And so what you're getting here with the regimental compared to the other broadsword model is something that is lighter, slightly less excessive, I would say, over the wrist, because that can be slightly annoying at times, and a blade that is more flexible as well as lighter. So this is 1140 grams, which means that it's exactly in the historically accurate range for the what we'd call regimental broadswords. So why is it called a regimental broadsword beyond just how different it is to the other model? Well, the idea being is that as Scottish swords went on into the 19th century, and particularly with the 1828 pattern, which is still the one that's current today, the blades tend to have a thinner profile than what came before them. And so it's generally thought of that what we call regimental today are a bit lighter than what came before it. Now, that's not entirely true because broadswords came in a vastly different range of kind of specifications. But overall, yes, the blades are narrow. They're also often lenticular, so in cross-section, which means they're not always quite as light as they necessarily look. So on an antique 1828 pattern, this is kind of loosely representing, the weight range is about 1150 to about 1250 grams total weight on average. So this is just into the light range of the average for that 19th century onwards Highland basket hilt. So that means that it's lighter than the other model. It's also a lot more flexible. So this blade is the kind of blade that first came on the Black Fencer rapiers and spadroons. It's different in that it doesn't have a fuller. It's flat on the flats, if you like. There's no fuller, and the edges cut into a narrower profile on the edge. It's still very thick. It's not going to, it's not going to cut you or anything. It's still kind of 3 or 4, maybe even 5 mil thick, but it's not the really fat, like centimeter thick edge found on their fuller blades. Now, I've always found with Black Fencer that this type of blade, what they often now call an edge profile, is better. It feels better, it binds better, it doesn't bounce so much. It somehow just feels so much nicer. And that's also helped by the fact that this is the latest grey blade material, which they've moved all their swords to now. This grey blade material, the idea being is that it looks more like steel, which it kind of does on film. It looks really, really nice. And also, it's designed to have better properties on thrusting. It's designed to be less wobbly, but still flex nicely and return true. So I have found it to be a nice little upgrade over the old white blades. Mostly aesthetic, but also actually a performance upgrade as well. Now back to the hilt. I said the old style broadsword one comes a bit further over the wrist, and I find that irritating. It gets in the way, it binds up on your arm guards or whatever. I think that's plenty enough for a basket hilt to have. Now, on historical examples, there were Scottish Highland swords that do extend way back over the wrist. That's absolutely true, so it's not inaccurate, but personally, I much prefer this style, especially as I practiced a lot of Napoleonic swordsmanship. And the first ever Scottish, Highland I should say, because it wasn't for all Scots, first ever Highland pattern was the 1798 and roughly looked like this. So that's quite nice. The blade is 85 centimeters. The balance is way back here at about 4 or 5 centimeters, which many basket hilts did balance far back. Around about sort of 5 to 8 centimeters is very, very common for this kind of sword, because the blades often aren't quite as heavy as, I mean, sometimes they are, but the blades aren't always as heavy as they look. Some of them are quite thin, and the hilts add a lot of weight. So, what do you have here? You have a Highland or Scottish basket hilt sword that is a bit lighter and a bit more nimble than the old model, a bit more flexible with better edge properties, and a hilt that I find much nicer in terms of wrist movement. And so I think this is a much better product than the other one. That said, if you want a more choppy, if you like, earlier kind of broadsword, the other one is still a really great model. But this is an exceptional product, and it has another couple of advantages as a result of this blade, this kind of like long spadroon blade that it's got, is it hits lighter on the cut and the thrust. It's a bit more gentler to your sparring partners, and that is sometimes nice. Sometimes you want, full weight, bit of a beast kind of sword, but often having something that is a bit lighter, a bit more flexible, a bit gentler is quite a benefit. So it's at the low end of the original range of kind of the lighter Scottish regimental and 19th century basket hilts. It handles really, really nicely. The guard does not get in the way of the wrist. The blade flexes really, really nicely. The edge interaction is nice for a synthetic. And so what you have here, I would say, is a really, really good all-rounder. Bear in mind with any basket hilt, you're not going to get big red dragon gloves in it. They're not designed for it. You are going to have to use fencing gloves, leather gloves, whatever else. But that's expected with the basket hilt. Overall, I think it's an excellent product. Do bear in mind that it's the light end of the spectrum for a broadsword. In many ways, it's a bit more like some of the mid-18th century single-edged or backsword-bladed Scottish swords that were mass-produced in Birmingham and London, actually. And it's in many ways a bit like that. It's a kind of roughly around about a kilo, lightweight, fast basket hilt, but absolutely still within a historical range. So would I recommend it? Yes, absolutely. If you want to do Highland or British broadsword practice, this is a good all-rounder. What it basically is a more realistic single stick, because single stick, of course, was the standard training tool for sabre and broadsword and all the others. And single sticks, they are a traditional training tool, but they don't flex, so this has a huge advantage, and they're nothing like as realistic in so many regards in look, feel, and function compared to this. So would I recommend it? Absolutely yes. I'm actually going to sell this on now into our club, but only because carrying basket hilts is a pain in the ass. So I tend to carry 3 or 4 steel basket hilts in my bag, which already takes up a lot of space, as do big complex hilted rapiers and side swords and that kind of thing. So I just can't be carrying another basket hilt. If I'm going to carry a load of synthetics, they'll be, sabres and spadroons, something that doesn't take up so much bag space. So that's the only reason I'm selling it on. I think it's a really good all-round training sword, and I would definitely recommend it. And lastly, going back to what I said right at the start that I alluded to, is black fencer durability, and especially with the synthetic form. So when you compare synthetic prices to steel prices, you're obviously paying a hell of a lot less, but that doesn't even tell the full story. Steel swords break all the time. Doesn't matter who you buy them from. If you use steel training swords regularly, and they are of a realistic kind of weight and feel, they're not overbuilt, they're going to break. It happens. Usually about every 2 or 3 years you'll break a sword, more often sometimes, and so you do go through them, and it's expensive as a result. Synthetics, black fencer synthetics, we've broken, of the hundreds that we've bought, we've broken 1 blade, which happened immediately and was replaced under warranty. We've never broken another blade, and the only hilt issues we've ever had were on earlier models, and so the durability on these black fencer synthetics is fantastic. So they don't rust, they don't need really any maintenance, they pretty much don't break, and so the durability is fantastic. You'll notice a little bit of chipping on the blade here. That is where it has hit another basket hilt. So you will take a little bit of edge damage against steel baskets and similar, and bucklers and things like that. I really don't think that's an issue. It never has been for us. And the last thing I would mention is, bear in mind with a synthetic blade, in terms of maintenance, if you leave it at an angle in a bag, or for example, or in a car, it can deform the blade, but they can be reset. Just bend them back, put them in a bit of sunlight or near a radiator, you can reset them straight. This one, I've almost got it back straight again already. Thanks for watching. It's a great product, and please do subscribe if you haven't already.